Welcome to the John Freakin' Muir Pod. Lace up those boots and sling on the pack for a romp through trails, short and long. With your host and Renaissance man, Doc. It's time to embrace the suck.
Welcome back to another week on the trail. I'm Doc, and this is the John Freakin' Muir Pod, also known as Conversations with Cool Hiking People. Let's start off with a reminder. If you are enjoying the podcast, help us out. Take just a minute and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. And if you're not enjoying the pod, well, just go ahead and keep that to yourself. All right, on to this week's content. It is my pleasure to have author and adventurer Paul Barach on this week's episode. Paul has quite the hiking resume and a very interesting hiking memoir titled Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains from his time on the Shikoku Pilgrimage in Japan. Welcome to the pod, Paul.
Thanks, Doc. Glad to be on.
So I know in America, and I know you've done a lot of American hiking as well, that we pick up trail names. And I'm wondering, just from your time on the PCT and is it the Colorado Trail?
Colorado Trail, yeah.
Yeah, if you've picked up a trail name during that time.
Oh, yeah. I picked up a trail name my first day on the PCT, which was Snake Eyes, because I would consistently just walk past gigantic rattlesnakes without seeing them. Like, it took me longer than I'm willing to say for me to actually acknowledge there was any danger next to me.
Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That might be a good thing, just not having to deal with the fear of that.
I mean, it's cool till they start rattling and then you realize they're a foot away from you. But yeah, ignorance is bliss, I guess.
All right. So we go strictly by trail names on the pod here. So from this point forward, I'm going to call you Snake Eyes.
Sounds good.
Okay. Hey, have you had a chance to listen to the podcast before?
I haven't. I've been really busy. I'm sorry.
Okay. No apology necessary. I only ask because we have a regular feature that I want to make sure that you're aware of, and that is the Pro Tip Insight of the Week. Ooh. And what that is, that's a segment towards the end of the episode where I will turn to you and I will ask you, Snake Eyes, what is your Pro Tip Insight of the Week? What tip, trick, bit of wisdom can you share with our listeners to make their next outdoor experience even more epic? So,
oh man, I think I got one.
Okay. All right. Don't let go of that, and don't share it too early. Because if you share something during the episode,
it's not going to come true. I know. You
gotta think of something else. Okay. Very good. Hey, Snake Eyes, another feature we've been doing this season is the must bring gear review. Ooh. Here's how it works. If you were to let a stranger pack your bag with pretty much generic gear for a multi-day hike, what is the one specific piece of gear you would insist on being packed? And if you've got a particular brand for that specific piece of gear, even better. So what is your must-bring piece of gear?
Oof. Can I do a twofer?
Absolutely.
Fantastic. The must-bring piece of gear, which I did not have on my PCT trip and made most of my nights miserable, is, for the love of God, get a good puffy. Like a Patagonia puffy, especially a brightly colored one, mine's neon green, I have made up for not having that on the PCT by wearing that consistently. It is comfortable. It packs up so tiny. I've been able to fit it into a stuff sack the size of a softball and pays dividends. If you're cold at night, just throw that on. You'll sleep warmer. The other piece of gear, because everyone knows about Patagonia, is Sea Champion 7 Power Cool boxer briefs, especially the long trunk ones. Those, nobody knows about them. Everyone's been sleeping on them, but that is the most comfortable hiking underwear if you're a guy that you can wear. Like, I wear them all the time. They're the only boxer briefs I wear. And I hiked the PCT with, I think, 2 pairs of those, and they never wore out. They never stunk up. They never chafed. Like, Champion, it'll say C7 on the waistband. But yeah, power cool.
That is highly specific, and that is a very good pro tip. Actually, it's not a pro tip. Your gear review: Champion C7 Power Cool Boxer Briefs.
Everyone's been sleeping on them. Everyone goes for the more expensive stuff, but you can get a 2-pack for $25 and just amazing.
Okay.
Quality gear.
Very good. Speaking of quality and gear, I just want everybody to see on the YouTube video of this episode that I am representing Trail Mix tonight, which is the documentary, the Appalachian Trail documentary put together by Glenn Schweitzer. So let me show some great shirt there with the Trail Mix logo on there. Shout out to Glenn Schweitzer, great friend, and looking forward to the release of his new trail documentary, Appalachian Trail documentary.
Great job, Glenn.
Okay, very good. All right, hey, let's back up a little bit before we get to the trail, and let's talk about your background. Where'd you grow up? What kind of hobbies and sports were you involved in? And how did you get involved in the thru hiking cult?
Man, mine's hella circuitous, but basically grew up in Seattle, Washington, and my mom was bringing me out for hikes as much as she could, and I hated it. I hated being outdoors. A lot of it, I just have bad memories of bugs. Just black fly season is no joke. Basically, like the whole hiking thing started when I spent a semester abroad in southern Spain, because I lived way out, like way away from the school, about 3 miles. And so every day, because I didn't have a bicycle or anything, I just walked from my host family all the way up the Albaicin to the Alhambra Overlook, and that was where my school was. And I mean, straight up magical. If you ever get the chance, go to Granada. It's one of the best cities in Spain, I think. But I just got so used to walking that when I got back to college, I was just sitting around. And I was like, I don't feel right. I need to go walk like 3 to 6 miles today. And so I started walking around our arboretum at night, and that just kind of got me into loving the outdoors. But my first actual thru hike was the Shikoku Pilgrimage. And after that one, I think after that one, I loved hiking, but I never really understood how magic it was until I actually finished writing the book, because I'd basically spent 3 years indoors at a desk just bashing this thing out and editing. And I went and hiked the Wonderland Trail around Mount Rainier on a break from the bar I worked at. And after that, I was hooked. Like once you hike around Mount Rainier, or even hike close to it, you'll fall in love with that mountain. It's impossible not to, I think.
Yeah. And did you also spend some time in South Korea?
I did. I spent time in South Korea as a teacher, and huge hiking culture out there. Did some really beautiful hikes. Mount Sorok is the best one, in my opinion. If you can, go in the fall. But yeah, that was mostly just to get out of the city. But yeah, Mount Sorok is beautiful. And it's funny because the Korean hiking culture involves a lot of drinking. So there's soju stands at the bottom of the mountain, soju stands usually midway up the mountain. And it took me a while to realize, like, if I saw an old man stumbling around on the subway on a weekend, he wasn't sick or having an episode. He was just hammered after going hiking.
And what is, for those of us not familiar, what is a soju stand?
Oh, soju is Korean white rice wine. It's basically the drink of Korea.
Got it. So they do it right over there, huh?
They love it.
You know, when I was hiking the JMT, we got to the top of Mather Pass, and after that ordeal, I was expecting some kind of, I was hoping for a Jamba Juice stand up there, but there was nothing, no welcoming, committing, nobody. So
That's pretty, yeah, it's why you always got to bring your own. It's
that's right.
BYOB.
That's right, for sure, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about your book and what your inspiration was. You mentioned the Shikoku
Shikoku.
Pilgrimage. Tell us about that. And how did you end? Is it in Japan?
It is in Japan, yeah.
So how'd you end up in Japan? How'd you hear about this? Take us through everything.
So as the story goes, I was just obsessed with Japan from a young age because I was like, oh, that's where ninjas are from. So, you know, if you grew up in the 80s and early 90s, all of your cartoons had a ninja. And you know, they were pretty cool. They even ate pizza and lived in a sewer. So, you know, I'm sold. And as I got older, I just kind of kept being fascinated by Japan. I got into Zen Buddhism. I started practicing martial arts. And I took this class on Japanese religion and culture because I was just like, whatever, I'm sure 1 week will be on ninjas and I'll have an easy B. You know, they weren't, but while I was taking that class, one day the professor showed this documentary on the Shikoku Pilgrimage, which is this 750-mile trail that starts on Shikoku Island, which is Japan's smallest and most rural island, and it visits these 88 temples dotting the rim of the island. It's 750 miles long, and at each temple you stop, you say a set series of prayers, and then you get this beautiful calligraphy done of the temple's name, and you move on. And it just sounded magical. These temples are, you know, nestled in cedar forests and perched on mountaintops and, you know, in waving rice fields and beside the Pacific Ocean and the Seto Sea. And I was just like, that sounds incredible. And then I forgot about it for 8 years until I was at a job I hated, thinking like, all right, well, you're 28 and, you know, so I guess now's the time to be miserable for the rest of your life because, you know, the job pays okay.
It's all downhill from there.
Yeah, that's what I was told. And I just was sitting there like, okay, this can't be it. You know, I've backpacked across Europe. I've taught English in South Korea. I got to do one more thing, you know, one final one for the road, you know? And I was like, what can I do? And then I thought, and then it just flashed back in my head like, oh, the pilgrimage. And then I did no preparation and got to Japan, and it was the hottest summer on record, and my shoes didn't fit, and I don't speak Japanese. And I got charged by a boar my first day, spent the third day collapsing from dehydration. 2 weeks in, I was hiding out from guards in a toilet stall all night. I broke a piece of an ancient temple and got a leg infection. And then I ran off because I was like, I don't know how much ancient temples cost, you know, in my own idiocy, because these temples are rebuilt constantly. It's not like wood lasts 1,000 years, but I was such an idiot. I was just like, oh man. And so ran off, got a leg infection because that's how karma works. And then a couple of days after getting my leg infection taken care of at the doctor, got into a karate match with a priest on a mountaintop at dusk, which was the coolest thing ever. And that's all in my book, Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains, available on Amazon in ebook, audiobook, and print.
Nice plug there right there. And
thank you. It's very natural.
Up until that karate match on top of the mountain, you made it sound so appealing with all these things that went wrong.
Oh yeah, no. If you're not an idiot, it's fantastic. If you're 28 and don't do any research and it's your first thru hike, everything is harder.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, and even it's beautiful though. Like you know, for any of your listeners, look it up, read my book, but do your own research. And it's I think life-changing, and those temples are gorgeous. There are some of them, like one in this cedar forest that looked like some cedar cones opened and just a temple grew instead of another tree. Yeah, the Pacific Ocean is beautiful out there. Some parts look like Hawaii. There's all these mountains you get to cross, and it's an incredible culture.
Right.
And so the people are so nice. There's this tradition of giving gifts to walking pilgrims, and yeah, it'll fill your heart if you do it.
Okay. Now, Snake Eyes, I've got some questions.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. So how did the pilgrimage and what you had to bring with you, how did that differ from a traditional American long trail through hike?
Well, for one thing, 90% of the Shikoku Pilgrimage is on concrete. So you want to wear different shoes. I wore shoes with the metal rock plate that I hadn't road tested, and so every step hurt. So do not wear walking shoes, basically. You don't need to pack as much food because there are convenience stores along a lot of it. I mean, I couldn't find food because, again, just I don't know why. I was an idiot. I lost, I think, 30 pounds in 3 weeks. But if you're going, you don't need to pack a lot of food. You don't need to pack days worth because you'll most likely be in civilization. You'll be in civilization for most of it. You'll also dress differently if you want to do it correctly. You'll be wearing a sedge hat, like people who work in rice paddies wear.
Mhm.
You'll also be wearing a vest that announces that you travel with the monk the pilgrimage is based on, who is Kobo Daishi or Kukai. And you'll be carrying a walking staff, which also represents Kukai traveling beside you. And whenever you go into your tent or into one of the free lodgings for walking pilgrims, who are called henro, you have to very reverently wipe the bottom of the staff and place it in a corner wherever you're staying. Let's see. Other than that, I mean, you don't really need to bring a lot of clothes, and you will have a lot more access to like showers and stuff. But it all depends on how much you want to pay. If you want to pay a lot of money, you could have lodging every night. It's more like the Camino de Santiago than it is traditional through hiking trail.
Got it. How much did your pack weigh?
45 pounds.
Or how much could your pack weigh? Let's put it that way.
I mean, I think my pack was like 45 pounds or something because I also was carrying a stamp book, a journal, a map book, and also, I didn't know how to pack at that point. I was bringing a lot of town clothes that I don't think I needed.
Right. If you had to do it over again, how much would your pack weigh?
I mean, if I had to do it over again, my pack would weigh about 35 pounds, I think.
Okay. All right.
But I don't do the whole like ultralight packing thing. I really don't pay attention to pack weight anymore.
You're not cutting the straps off your pack or drilling holes in your toothbrush to save the grams?
No. I think, to be honest, I get it, but at the same time, I think ultralighters are their own cult, and they bug me because I got a lot of judgy looks for my pack, and I finished the PCT. My pack was hella heavy, and I was mostly comfortable.
Yeah. Through hiking is definitely a cult, and there are several branches of subcults within that. So for sure.
Yeah. What are the other ones you think?
Oh, okay.
Because you got the cultralighters.
You've got the cold soakers.
Oh yeah.
Which is kind of a sub branch of the ultralighters, right?
Mm-hmm.
They did not bring a stove, so they're just going to cold soak everything.
Yeah, although to be honest, I've given up my stove. I just bring like tortillas and peanut butter and like mayo and salami and tuna, and I don't miss a stove.
Mhm.
I don't need the coffee in the morning. I just want to eat and get out and move.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 750 miles, how long did it take you?
Took me 42 days. So about 18, 20 miles a day. I think I would have, if I had to do over again, the one thing I'd do differently is I'd wear comfortable shoes because that really was what was pushing me to like get this thing done, take these fucking things off and burn them. Because, 2010 Shikoku Island, no one had size 12 feet. So I was just stuck with them.
Ouch, that's
But
painful. I mean,
yeah,
if your feet are hurting,
every day,
that's
every
all you
step.
that's all you can think of.
Yeah, I mean, like everything else on the pilgrimage, it became its own lesson. But yeah, if I had to do over again, I'd wear better shoes. And anyway, so if I was wearing better shoes, I would have built in at least 1 to 2 0 days a week just to chill out and enjoy Shikoku Island.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Very good.
42 days.
Okay, very good. Let's talk about the title of the book, Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains.
Mm.
How did you arrive at that title?
Uh, it took a long time. Titles are really hard to think up if anyone's thinking of writing a book. But Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains kind of was the balance of what that pilgrimage was. Because on the one hand, in my brain, I'm like, oh man, I'm going on an ancient pilgrimage and this, foreign land that I've been obsessed with forever. And, it's watched a lot of anime and kung fu movies. And so I'm going to be like, using all the karate that I've been learning to like fight monks. And some old guy's going to give me a sword and be like, you are ready now. And I'll be like, of course I am. Thanks for noticing. And then there's the harsh reality, which was the third day on a mountain called Burning Mountain. Because I was unprepared, because I didn't know what was coming, I was collapsing from dehydration for 6 hours. Like I would stand up, take 50 steps, and fall back down. And I just was at a certain point was like, I might pass out here, I might die here, I don't know. But at the same time, I was like, I am not turning back. I'm gonna keep going and I will finish this. And it's not just because I don't want to go back home and be like, yeah, guys, it was really hard. I know I talked about it for a while, but man, third day, it just got tough. So fuck it. Although, God, when I hiked the PCT, someone quit the first day. It still blows my mind. It's like, what did you think this was? You had to sublet out your apartment or something.
That's soul crushing right there. Ouch.
It blows my mind that anyone would quit that the first day. But anyway, yeah. So Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains is like the expectations of this, magical, exciting, crazy journey, and the reality of this is serious. You need to be serious about it. You weren't prepared, and you will be dealing with this the entire time.
It's kind of the yin and the yang right there.
Yep.
A little of each.
Yeah.
Very good. Very good. So this, I can tell just from the way you talk about it and the fact that you came back and wrote a book about it, that this has made a lasting impact on your life.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, nothing in my life, like there's tons of lessons in that book, but I will tell you that nothing in my life physically has ever been as hard as climbing to Burning Mountain. Like no day on the PCT, no day bicycling across the United States. Nothing has ever been that hard. And it really set a level for what I can do.
So I usually save this part for later on in the episode, but since we're right here talking about this meaningful trip, let's do a top 5. Let's do the top 5 moments from the Shikoku Pilgrimage for Snake Eyes. What are your top 5 memories? Could be anything from the trail. Top 5 experiences, top 5 sites, top
Yeah.
5 lessons learned, or a combination of any of those?
Sure. I would say one of the first off the bat that I can think of was this night I got to a temple, went through all the ritual, and then I was wandering around, and there was this statue garden in the back of the temple. And I had no idea what the statues were. They were all these life-size, grotesquely carved figures, all individual. No one resembled the other. Like there was a drunk, and there was a warrior, and there was like a guy who had a mouse for a pet, and a guy who had like a dragon. And I later learned those were the 500 Rakan, who were the first 500 followers of the Buddha. But it was just this beautiful, eerie, unique, idiosyncratic moment where I was just walking through this beautiful thing that I didn't understand, but that was so clearly meaningful. You can add all the metaphor and symbolism into that you want.
Okay.
And then let's see, my first, oh God, the ramen. I'll never forget how good the ramen was, especially when I was hungry. But there was this, I was always hungry, and there was this festival, like an open air festival, you know, the kind where kids win goldfish in bags and stuff like that. But yeah, there was just this ramen tent, and it was just the most rich, delicious tonkatsu pork ramen that I'd ever had in my life. You know, when you're hungry, when it's hot, you've been sweating, and you just get this spicy, salty, delicious, rich, calorie thick food. That was something else.
I'm gonna venture to guess it's a little bit better than the ramen I have on my trips.
Nah, it's not better than Nissan. That shit's gourmet. And then let's see, fighting the priest on the mountaintop. That was one of the coolest things that I've ever done. I've made this joke before, but you know, if like I've told my wife, I have to be like a really, really good husband and a really fantastic father for you to put that on my tombstone instead of fought a priest on a mountaintop temple at dusk. Because like that's an accomplishment. That's going down.
That sounds pretty epic. How did that come to be? And who won? That's what I want to know.
I mean, he won because he laid a low block into my infected leg, like right onto the wound, and I was like trying not to throw up. And I was just like, all right, you didn't win, but I am done fighting today. Short story, because I, you know, read the book if you want to hear the long one. But it came about because I was practicing karate every night because I was preparing for my black belt. And I got to this temple at dusk and got into a good conversation with the priest. He complimented me reading the prayers, and you know, then he was like, "Why are your arms so big?" And I didn't know the Japanese for "I can't find any food here." So, because I looked like Bane with cancer at that point. And so I was just like, I do Kyokushin. And he goes, oh, I do Goju-ryu. And then we got into a conversation, and, you know, then I asked him if I could practice karate after everyone had left. And then we just kind of shared a look. I raised my fist and said, kumate. He said, kumate, which means to fight. And then we just squared up, and I had a karate match with a priest on a mountaintop temple at dusk one night. And yeah, that was just, it felt like my reward for everything else I'd gone through on that pilgrimage.
It felt like a reward right up until the time he nailed that infection on your leg.
Yeah, it was not rewarding at that point.
Yes.
It was just another thing that went wrong. So that's, let's see, 3.
That's 3. Yeah.
Let's see, 4. So like I said, my shoes didn't fit, and so I would have to cut blisters, you know, drain them, bandage new ones. Like my feet were just getting chewed up. And there was this one night I stopped early, and 3 times a day I'd have to take care of my feet. And I took off my shoes and I was so tired, and I looked down and I just started laughing because my feet were so covered in bandages. It looked like I was preparing them for Egyptian burial. Like they looked mummified at that point. And then, man, I think the fifth one I'm gonna say was the. All right, I'm gonna cheat and do two more.
Okay.
One was finishing the pilgrimage and getting the final stamp in my stamp book, because the stamp book it's amazing. It's my favorite possession, or one of them, but it was always a hassle. Like you had to show up at a temple during the open hours. If I came to a temple at 5 o'clock and it was closed, I'd have to wait around and I'd have to camp there. Couldn't go further until it reopened. Then I could get the stamp. And at the end of the pilgrimage, when it was all done, I started looking through the stamp book, and I just saw every page. I would see the person who signed it, like in my memory, like every one. I could see where I was. I could remember how I felt. And it was this moment where I was just like, wow, every page was this beautiful thing that I didn't enjoy at the time because I was just thinking about something else.
Thinking about your feet.
Yeah, exactly. Thinking about my feet, thinking about how hot it was. And the last thing I'll say, which I think is, I don't know like how it is with other thru hikes, because I just know Shikoku because that was my first. But after I finished the pilgrimage, I left Shikoku Island by ferry. And so it was overcast that day, I remember. It was just, dreary day on an island. And I got on the ferry, and the ferry pulled away. And suddenly I realized, like, only Shikoku was under the clouds. Like, the sun was on me. And when I started the pilgrimage, even the first day, it felt like I'd been there forever. Like, it felt like, not like I didn't have a memory of before, but the first day was just like, I've always been on Shikoku. And that's how it felt for 42 days. It felt like I was there forever. And then the ship pulled away, and I looked back, and I was just like, the spell broke. And I was like, wow, that was only 42 days.
I was just going to say,
that's a month and a half.
Sounds like you were under the spell of Shikoku.
Yeah, like I don't say it much in the book because I wanted to make the book sort of a memoir and a travel guide, but that island is magic. And I'll flat out say that, now. But yeah, there's some magic shit that happened. And yeah, again, go do the Shikoku Pilgrimage if you're ever available, and read my book beforehand so you don't make mistakes.
Okay, one more time, where can we get your book?
On Amazon, Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains, and Misadventures on a Buddhist Pilgrimage.
Okay, and how many pages?
I think it's less than 300.
Okay. All right, very good.
Yeah.
So pause the podcast right now and go on Amazon, order your copy. And we are going to take a quick break. When we come back from break, we're going to hear some more adventures from some of your other experiences, like bicycling across the United States and hiking Wonderland Trail, Pacific Crest Trail, and the Colorado Trail. Stay tuned for that. We'll be right back.
This is Paul Barach, the author of Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains, Misadventures on a Buddhist Pilgrimage, and you are listening to the John Freakin' Muir Pod.
And welcome back. We are talking to Snake Eyes. We just heard about his Shikoku Pilgrimage in 2010 and the subsequent book, Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains. And now we're going to venture into another big adventure of his, which is bicycling across the United States. How did you get this idea in your head? And what are the logistics involved with making a trip like that?
So that idea I got in my head because of a art film called Koyaanisqatsi, which...
That's easy for you to say.
Yeah, right. Easy for me and the Hopi. Uh, so it was this art film where it's just montages and footage that's sped up and slowed down, but all of the United States. And so I watched it in college and, was frequently stoned. And I just like loved this movie. And as I got near the end of college, I was like, I realized I have not seen most of the United States. Like, I went to college in Minnesota. I lived in Seattle for all of my life. I'd seen California, I'd seen Oregon, but I had no idea what was in the middle. And so I thought, okay, well, you know what? I would like to go kind of feel this country. But I hate driving because I feel like you can't really appreciate anything when you see it out of a windshield. So I said, I'm going to ride my bicycle across it and worked, saved up, and left my job and spent 3 months, 2.5 months bicycling across the United States. I would have spent longer, but my best friend was getting married and kind of sprung that wedding date on me. So had to shorten my trip a little.
So let's talk starting point, ending point, and what kind of bike you were riding.
Sure. Starting point was my training ride went from Seattle to San Francisco along the Highway 1 and the 101. And then my bicycling trip across the country started in Yorktown, Virginia, and ended in Anacortes, Washington. And I used a 2012 Novara Randonnée, which is a REI built bike. I think it's 28 or 38 pound steel frame.
Oh, heavy bike.
Heavy, but it soaked up the road. And that thing survived crashes into trucks. That bike's indestructible. I still have it.
Now, I know that there is a Trans Am course that goes from Virginia. I think it's to Oregon. Did your route follow the majority of that, or did you?
Yeah. So at that point, I was buying the bicycle maps from the organization that runs that. Yeah. So from Yorktown, Virginia to I think Pueblo or something. I was on that trail, and then I extended it up to the northern one, the northern trail, so up to Whitefish, Montana, because I had a friend there and I wanted to hike Glacier. And then from Whitefish went through Idaho all the way to Anacortes. But I think the other one ends in like Astoria, Oregon or something.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. And if you have not listened to the pod, I'm going to give you a couple episodes to be a starter pack, just personally for you, Snake Eyes. One is Keith Foskett's episode. He wrote The Last Englishman about his, it's a PCT memoir. And just a very funny guy, hilarious. The title of the book is The Last Englishman because I think there were 3 Englishmen on the trail that year, and he finished very, very late. So he was the last Englishman on the trail. And then the other one I'm going to recommend is I talked to long distance bike racer Lael Wilcox, and she took up competitive racing, long distance racing on bikes, I think in 2015. Just picked it up, and in 2016 she won the Trans Am.
Wow.
Male, female, she won it, and she caught Stefan from Germany with 100 miles to go, 100 miles from the finish line. Wow. Caught him after 4,100 miles and put him in the rear view and won the race. It's quite a story. I told her I'm ready to see the movie on that, but
she's bonkers.
Yeah, so 2 great episodes that I think you'd be really interested in.
Yeah, I'll check them out.
Okay.
Was she hallucinating at the end of that?
Stefan, that to her advantage, Stefan was hallucinating. He was trying to keep his lead on her and was only sleeping like, an hour a day. And he actually ended up going the wrong way at some point. And she ran into him heading her way, and she realized that he was going the wrong direction, and this was who he was trying to avoid. So quite a story, quite a finish. Pretty incredible.
Yeah, I'll check it out.
Okay. So what parts of the U.S. were your favorite to see firsthand from the handlebars?
Uh, man, definitely Wyoming and Montana. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, going down the 1 and the 101, like the Oregon coast is actually the Washington coast and the Oregon coast and Northern California are incredible. Bicycling through the redwoods was so great because you can just look straight up. You know, you can't do that in a car.
Hmm.
And you just get so much more of a sense of the scale when you're in the air. But yeah, like going past the Tetons, being able to bicycle around Yellowstone is incredible. Like though you are so close to the bison, it is terrifying. But you also don't get caught in the traffic. So you can just go and it's so freeing. And then yeah, Montana. Montana was just uh, beautiful, surrounded by those mountains. Colorado was really nice. I remember. Yeah, the whole Continental Divide was just an amazing part, except Pueblo, which I hope not to lose any listeners, but man, fuck Pueblo.
Oh, wow. It's a strong opinion on Pueblo. What
I
happened?
did. I just it felt sketchy the moment I got there. The second I stopped pedaling at a stop sign, someone pulled up and like offered me meth. I was just like, I'm on a bicycle. What am I gonna do with meth? And they was like heroin, and I was like, no, I'm on a bicycle. But yeah, like Colorado's great. Yeah, the whole one of the things that actually struck me, which I think not a lot of people would appreciate, was the whole center of the country used to be a shallow ocean. And it really, at parts when you're bicycling through the more abandoned sections of Wyoming that no one really likes, uh, it really just struck me that, yeah, this was formed by currents. This was laid down, so long ago. And it was what I wanted when I bicycled across. It was like, I feel this landscape. I understand this landscape. It's not just, uh, you know, uh, depression on my gas pedal or letting off of the gas pedal. It's like, this is a world that was formed before me.
Hmm.
This is a world that I am much smaller than and that I am just passing through.
Yeah, there's something about making long trips under human power that kind of puts things in perspective.
It really does. Like on the PCT, I remember get having that experience a couple of times where you just realize like I'm just passing through. Like these are all these views are just, these are the art pieces in a museum. The museum's going to be there forever. I'm the one who's transient.
That's right. Those views were there long before you, and they'll be there long after you.
Yep.
Hopefully,
Yeah.
knock on wood.
Yeah. Right.
Yep.
Protect your national parks, people.
So, total mileage on your cross country bicycle trip?
Oh man, I haven't thought about that in a while. I think 4,700,
Wow.
47. Yeah, probably. I
Hmm.
was doing about 100 miles a day.
Okay. And any uh-oh moments? Any moments where you found yourself, other than Pueblo, any other moments where you found yourself thinking, oh my gosh, what have I gotten myself into here?
The entire fucking state of Kansas. The
Really?
entire state of Kansas was a goddamn nightmare.
You
I
know,
still remember it.
so I've talked to a couple of people who have done some long bike rides like this, and I've asked them about favorite parts, and I think it was Lael Wilcox for sure, and I cannot remember the other person I talked to, but they both raved about the state of Kansas. They said you'd be surprised what I'm going to say right now, but Kansas was awesome. You didn't have that same experience.
I bet they had tailwinds because
Oh.
normally the winds are going from, when you're going across Kansas, they're going from east to west. So like the first day I got into Kansas, like I barely had to pedal. Like it was just easy. And I was like, God, this place is beautiful. Look at all these, fucking cornfields and these silos. And man, what a neat place. And then this storm system hit in, I think, Texas. The temperature skyrocketed to like 110. And there was just these like jet exhaust headwinds coming at me. I was pedaling as hard as I could for days and going maybe 10 miles an hour, maybe 5. And it sucks the moisture out of your mouth. It's miserable. You're dehydrated. And the worst part was that these huge trucks would be just gunning by me. And because of how physics works, they would create a vacuum as they passed. So my bicycle would get shaken into the trucks, like backwash. And one time, I swear to God, me, the bicycle, and all of my gear, like 250 pounds of shit was lifted off of the ground in one of those tailwinds. Wow. So yeah, it was a nightmare.
So Kansas was not a good spot for you.
Kansas was the worst.
Okay.
I hate that place because when you're going fast, it's great. When you're going slow, you realize how long Kansas is. Like I would see a silo 3 hours away, finally get to it, and then there'd be nothing. Mm-hmm. And then another silo just in the distance. And that was days of that. So nice people, but yeah, I still hold a grudge against that state. I don't think I'm ever going back.
Nice.
It felt personal.
Now, when I think about a cross-country bike ride, what comes up in my mind are the Rockies and going over the Rockies or going through the Rockies. That sounds torturous to me. Was it torturous?
No, it was fine. I love the Rockies. I mean, I think I pulled my first day going up, I was kind of dawdling because I was like, God, the wind's gone. I'm in another state. Like, thank God. And so then I was like, eating at a gorge somewhere. And the waitress was like, oh, you're going to bicycle up, keep going? And I was like, yeah. And she's like, oh, be careful. And I'm like, yeah, I know, because of the cars, right? She goes, no, mountain lions. And I was like, haha, I'll take my check. And then I just it started getting dark and I started getting spooked. So I was pedaling as fast as I could up the Rockies. And the air was like, you know what the air's like. And so I'm sipping air because I can't gulp it because it's so thin. And the next day I'd pulled a rib because I was breathing so fast trying to get up so a cougar wouldn't get me. But yeah, I mean, the Rockies are gorgeous. I lived in Denver for a while and yeah, it's a beautiful country. But the best part of the Rockies, as opposed to Kansas, was there was a downhill.
Yes.
So once I got over it, I didn't have to pedal and it was just easy.
Nice. Very good. And any cougar sightings?
Not that time.
Okay.
So, thank God. But yeah, they're out there, man.
All right. And how long did it take you again? 4,700 miles? How long did it take you?
I think 48 days, 49. Took a couple of zeros.
Mm-hmm. All right. Very good.
But yeah, it was great.
Just looking at some of the things that we've talked about already and some of the things we're going to talk about. Let me just go through them here. You get the pilgrimage. You wrote a book. You've got the bike tour across the country. You've done the PCT. I mean, these are major items from a serious bucket list that you've been able to just cross right off.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm incredibly lucky.
Very good. And so what's next? I mean, we're going to talk about some other stuff that you've done, but what's next on this list? I feel like you've got momentum. You got to keep it going.
Next is the honeymoon for me and my wife, where we got married last year, a small ceremony. And, we were very lucky and she found an opening. So we got to raft the Grand Canyon, which was incredible. But yeah, I think I would love to.
Wait a second. You've already rafted the Grand Canyon?
Section of it. Yeah. Yeah. Rafted the lower rapids. Yeah. The lower rapids.
So that's another item on that I can put on this list of incredible accomplishments by Snake Eyes.
Yeah, I mean it was a tour group, but we were in the raft that was paddling most days, and oh man, the rapids are that was so much fun. it got spooky at one part, but man, the rapids are incredible. And yeah, so I think the Annapurna Trail. And after that, I mean, probably gonna start trying for a kid. So
Okay.
gonna be roaming a little closer to home.
Yeah. Yeah. And where are you located right now?
Tacoma, Washington.
Okay. Oh, Pacific
So,
Northwest. There's a lot to
mhm.
do up there. Holy
Oh
cow.
yeah, yeah. I'm gonna try to hike the Wonderland Trail again this year. I hiked the Three Sisters Wilderness last year. That was cool. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
there. I mean, I'm so spoiled. Like
Mm-hmm.
the Rockies are amazing, and I still am just kind of I shrug at them half the time because I'm like, yeah, have you seen the Cascades?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Rockies, but they have volcanoes. Like it's
Right.
beautiful out here, man.
Right.
This is the paradise.
So let's talk about the Wonderland Trail. You've already done it once,
Hmm.
and we heard you raving about Mount Rainier as you were discussing that. When did so you did the pilgrimage, you did the bikepacking tour across the U.S., and then when did it kind of settle upon you that, you know what, maybe long distance hiking, where I carry everything on my back that I need to survive is a good idea?
So what put it in my mind was just I had been once I got back from the bike trip, I had finally left the office job that I hated, and I was on unemployment, and so I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna write this book, and that was the hardest thing I've ever done. Writing a book is unbelievably difficult, and congratulations to literally anyone who does it. It's an incredible feat. So I'd spent like 2 years just staring into a screen, like going over, the same words. And after the book was done, I sent it to an editor, and I was like, oh, I'm done. There's literally nothing I can do right now. And so I'd always been like, it come into my head in those couple of years, like, holy shit, we live around volcanoes. How wild is that? Like my state has a volcano that erupted relatively recently, like
Mm-hmm.
2 years before I was born. And so I'd been, looking at Rainier, and I was like, well, are there any long hikes? Because at that point, I was working as a bartender at the Mariners Stadium. The Mariners are a baseball team, and they had this long away stretch. And so I was like, well, are there any long hikes? Just clear my head. And I looked it up, or I think someone told me about it. And they're like, yeah, there's the Wonderland. You ever considered that? And I was like, that sounds perfect. And it turns out like there's a lottery system for the Wonderland and a bunch of stuff. But if, again, you're unprepared and lucky, like me, you can also just go up there and they reserve 10% of the tickets for walk ups. So I just called up and I was like, hey, what are my chances? And the ranger was like, well, if you're flexible with your distances, come try. So I went up and I was like, okay, I want to go here, here, and here. And they said, okay, you can, if you change it up a little, you got your pass. So I brought a backpack, and it was my first time really bringing all my food. It was amazing to me now, but I made it off of one boil bag for breakfast, a tortilla and peanut butter for lunch, and then a boil bag for dinner. And I didn't bring anything else. And thank God hiker hunger takes 2 weeks to kick in. So I just did most of it, and then my mom came and met me at Longmire, and I hiked a little bit with her, and she gave me a little resupply, and I finished up. But yeah, it something that like I came to at that point that I still feel is like, I'm not a super religious person. I was raised Jewish, but I don't believe in like a God. Uh, but looking at being close to mountains, especially Rainier, I'm like, yeah, I totally see how that's a God. You know, I totally see how people worship those. I totally see like why you would believe that. It's like mountains, the sky slash the sun, and the ocean are all things where I'm just thinking like, yep, if I didn't know any better, I would totally worship these things because they seem massive and unknowable. And yeah, Rainier, like I walked it, I whatever the non-normal direction is, because that's how I could camp. And it was incredible to wake up every day and just have this ivory glacier covered behemoth to my left as I circled, and you know, it'd come in and out of view, and it just was stunning. It was stunning to like see bears frolicking in a field. It was stunning to see elk. It was stunning to just be in this silence of this, you know, Tahoma literally means mother of waters. And there was no point on that trail where I didn't hear running water. I was either walking towards it or away from it, but it was never out of like, you know, hearing range.
Mm-hmm.
And it just was magic. It was just a magic time.
Yeah.
I wish I'd kept a journal.
You're taking all the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, you know, massive and powerful and magical. And you've mentioned all those words before I could get a word in. So
yeah,
I could totally see how, like you said, others could see that as, you know, being gods and a religious experience.
Yeah. The thing is like, every time I go to Rainier, I think about like how big that mountain is. And like, you want to use a different word. You want to be like, no, it's gargantuan. It's like titanic. It's colossal. It's godlike. But even those words like diminish how big that mountain is.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's huge. I think it's the biggest mountain in America. It's either I think it's the tallest. Like Whitney is higher, but from base to top, I think Rainier is actually taller.
Okay.
So Seattle pride, you know.
There you go. And have you, did you take pictures on that trip?
I did, yeah.
And did you bring those pictures home and did you show them to your friends and family and say, hey, look at this?
I mean, I posted them on Facebook, but I'm not going to lie, that camera sucked. And I wasn't very good as a photographer at that point. But yeah, it was hard to explain to people, like, like when you get back from any thru hiking, it's like getting back from Burning Man. And everyone's like, how was it? And you're just talking about this life-changing, amazing thing that they have no frame of reference for and kind of wish you'd shut up about.
Yes.
And you're just like, no, it was so quiet. And I sat by this stream and it was just quiet by this stream. And then they've stopped listening completely.
Yeah. I'm going to share with you a poetic turn of phrase that was given to me by another one of my guests, Jay Wilson, who did the John Muir Trail, talked about the frustration of 1,000-word pictures in million-word places.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, something I realized on the PCT was like, I feel like pictures almost capture it better in a way because it's so big and so overwhelming that you kind of have to like capture it in this little box, just a little piece of it. And it's like you're trying to capture this one line in this long poem, but you're just like, isn't this a cool line? And they're like, well, what about the poem? It's like, I can't remember it. It's too long.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. You know, It's the best poem I ever read.
Yeah. It's that you captured it exactly right. You come back and you tell people about it and they're like, yeah, it's great. You know, and you're like, no. It's not just great. It was life-changing. It was unbelievable. Yeah. The picture does not do it justice how massive those mountains were.
Oh man. Like, yeah, I was thinking about, that reminded me of when I was on the PCT, because, you know, my family's still in Seattle, I got to go visit home, like in the middle of it. Once I got to Snoqualmie Pass. And my sister came over and she's like, how's the PCT? And I was like, you have to ask a more specific question. And she's like, I'm just trying to find out what you like, how it's going. I'm just being nice. I'm like, Kate, you honestly have to ask a specific question. I cannot tell you what it's like. It's too big. And then she just got frustrated and watched TV. And I went downstairs and I was just like, yeah, it's Burning Man all over again. Where everyone's just like, so is it like, is everyone on drugs? And it's like, some of them, but there's also 14-foot tall walking robotic giraffes and a guy who hugs you and tells you that he's proud of you that you've never met. It's everything.
Wait a second.
And great music.
The 14-foot tall mechanical giraffes, that was on the PCT?
No, that was on the that was at Burning Man my first year. It would have been great on the PCT.
Very good. And speaking of the PCT, we're going to get in depth into Snake Eye's journey along the PCT in 2017 after this short break. We'll be right back after this. And welcome back. Talking to Snake Eyes, and we're going to get to that trip where he earned his trail name, Snake Eyes, the PCT. So tell us about how you went from the Wonderland Trail to saying, all right, that wasn't long enough. 2,600 miles, Mexico to Canada. That sounds about right. Let's do that.
Sure. Well, starting off, trigger warning. It's a sadder story, but basically, I finished writing the book. The book got published. I was living in Seattle, and then I was going to move to Denver because I was chasing a stand-up comedy dream at the time. And my girlfriend and in many ways best friend committed suicide. So I moved to Denver and, kind of started recovering, did some hiking out there, was working at a pot shop and was doing all right. And then in December of that year, this other girl I was dating, I didn't realize how mentally ill she was. And she started threatening to do it. And I broke up with her because I was like, I cannot handle another one. You really scared me. It was very triggering. And I can't date you anymore. And then the next day she killed herself. And so, yeah. At that point, nothing really mattered. And on New Year's, I was just like, okay, I don't really want to stay in Denver long term. And I clearly am going through some stuff that I'm not even fully aware of because you can't come out of that okay. So I said, fuck it, I'm going to hike the PCT. So I put all my stuff in Denver in storage, flew down to San Diego, and started the PCT because, I was messed up anyway and sad and figured, well, might as well be sad in a paradise. It's better than being sad in Denver. Because, man, those people are way too happy out there. It's like white person Disneyland, I swear to God.
That is a lot to deal with. I want to thank you for the alert in advance.
Yeah, well, it's a hard thing to talk about, but to be honest, and suicide is a national epidemic in America, and we do not talk about it, and it happens a lot. It happens a lot more than I think we address it. So I think, it should be mentioned and should be brought out into the light because it's not a shameful thing. It's an epidemic.
Right. Yep, absolutely. And so this was New Year's Eve heading into 2017 that you made the decision?
Yeah, heading into 2017. So I just said, I'm going to do it. And then basically in the span of, I think, 3 months, got my gear together, made a plan, and luckily I'd been able to save a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And yeah, just said, fuck it, I'm going.
And we've talked to a number of people who have done long trails for various reasons and have come out different people on the other side of things. How did the PCT impact this trauma that you had gone through?
So I mean, a lot of ways, man. Like,
Is that too big a question? Is that like asking how the
no,
PCT was?
it's not too big a question. It's just a question I'm still working on because I'm like everyone who hiked the PCT. Apparently, I'm trying to write a book about it too. But uh, so my first girlfriend Meredith killed herself on October 23rd of 2015, and the next year, October 23rd, 2016, was a bad day, just a bad day. Because first anniversary is a hard one, and and then it got worse because Trump was elected, and then uh, the other suicide. And so, I went out on the PCT, and the thing is, being out there, like, you're still hurting, but there's also awe, Every day there's awe, and every day has a purpose. Every day you wake up and you're like, I'm going to go there. And you get up and you pack your bag and you walk there. And on the way, as you're walking there, you see just beauty, and everyone's having a good time in this community. And it's powerful, and it gives you time to really just process, process what you've been through, and it gives you space. And it's also, you're alone, you're with people. But the thing that I've realized about hiking that's so great about hiking is you don't deal with bullshit. You deal with what you need to do for the day. And if you fuck up, you get injured or die or it gets bad. But you're not dealing with like daily bullshit anymore. Your mind's not taken up with it. So you're really freed. But so the reason I mentioned the date is, I finished the PCT. I've found this gratitude for life that I hadn't had for potentially ever. I suffer from chronic depression, and I reach a high point in my life, being on Half Dome, like one of three people up there for nearly an hour, just this dream. A couple of days after, I'm like crying because I'm seeing a sunset. I'm just so grateful that I'm there. And all that stuff just like stores up in you. And so it finishes, and I go through like this, like I'm worried to leave the PCT because it's been so great and so beautiful, and the world is literally and metaphorically on fire at that point. Like, Nazis are marching in Charlottesville, ash is raining down on my family in Seattle. Shit's crazy. And the first ride that I get is with my first hitch after I finish the PCT, because I'm trying to get to San Francisco because I know people there. And so, not to confuse your listeners, I flip-flopped because it was a bad snow year. So went around the Sierras and then got to Canada, came back. So I'm ending in like October 7th. So my first hitch is with an insane conspiracy theorist who's just yammering at me about the craziest shit I've ever heard after I get out of, this peaceful, quiet place. And then I get dropped off at a farm in Chico right as the Sonoma fires are starting. So there's this just, apocalyptic sky rising up, but it's also on a ranch. So I literally get to ride a horse into the sunset. And I'm just like leaning down to the horse, like, I know this is a metaphor. Like, I get it. And then I get to San Francisco, the first big city after this incredible journey. And I walk across the Golden Gate Bridge, and ash is literally raining down as I walk. And I'm like, I get it. It's a metaphor. I get it. And then I fly out and I look down on, I'm flying from San Francisco. I can see the whole stretch from Oregon to Washington. And I see just all of these places like Crater Lake and Adams and Helens and Rainier, just this, 1,000 miles that meant everything to me. And it's all covered in smoke and the fires are going. And I'm like, I get it. It's a metaphor. I get it. Land, and I'm ready to just go home and drink. And my dad goes, so do you want to meet your new niece? And I'm like, oh, fuck, right. Because my sister-in-law gave birth the day before I finished the Pacific Crest Trail. And so we go home and I'm just holding this new life in my hands. And I'm like, okay, you're adorable and I get it. Metaphors. It's very obvious what's happening here. And so, I immediately get sick the second I'm home because my entire body just crashes. And October 23rd is coming up. But I'm okay. I'm feeling more okay because I've just been through this incredible journey where it was beautiful and I was okay and the world around me was okay, even though the rest of the world's shit. And this friend of mine who I used to do comedy with, really more of an acquaintance who I'd only spoken to like once, we'd been liking each other's Instagram pictures. And so she was like, hey, do you want to meet up for a beer? I'd love to hear about the Pacific Crest Trail. And I'm like, yeah, I love talking about myself. This will be fantastic. And she'd also just gotten back from this amazing journey where she got a university fellowship and went through like 10 countries over 8 months. And so I'm like, yeah, perfect, friendly beer. But it was October 23rd. But I felt so okay because of the PCT that it wasn't as bad. So I was like, yeah, I'll go and meet you, because she was flying out for her birthday the next day. So this was the only day we could do it. And we met up at a bar. And that turned out to be my first date with my wife. So that's how the PCT changed me.
Outstanding.
In 2 years. Yeah.
That's phenomenal.
It was something, man. Still is.
Snake Eyes, would it be safe to say, as I'm trying to unpack everything that you've talked about there, it sounded like going into the PCT that there was a serious lack of meaning in your life, and that feeling of hopelessness and trying to make sense of the world, and it didn't make sense. And as you exited the PCT, you talk about all these metaphors and learning moments and insights into life. And so your life kind of transformed from this utter lack of meaning to now full of meaning.
I think what I learned from the PCT is that you can't be certain of your future. Like, your future is open. Because, like, October 23rd, I thought was always going to be a bad day. And now it's mixed, It's a very bittersweet day for me. And so, like, life, I don't know if it's fair to say life was meaningless. Like, it wasn't like I can't go on. It was because I've, not the first suicide I've been through, not the first tragic death. But it was just a moment where it was like, I don't know what else to do here. Mm-hmm. I don't know what else is going to be worth it, And so, yeah, going on the PCT was just a way to, like, I didn't expect to heal. I try not to expect anything from a journey. But yeah, I was like, you know what? And there were a lot of people on the PCT who had gone through similar stuff. Mm-hmm. There was a fireman who'd been so traumatized by what he'd seen just working in a fire department, and his coworkers had killed themselves in recent years, and so he went to try to heal. Another guy. His friend killed himself, I think, 2 weeks before he started the PCT. It's common. Like I said, And I think people go out there just to be okay. Because when I hiked the Shikoku Pilgrimage, I had a list of rules for myself. It was very set. It was regimented because I was like, this is going to be the big final thing, you know? And when I went on the PCT, I was just like, just be okay. Like, whatever you do, just be okay, you know? Finish this, and, you know, you don't have to be stuck to rules, you know? You don't have to not listen to music. You don't have to, I don't know, walk every step, although I did, except for the stretch from Lake Isabella to Kennedy Meadows. I didn't do that 70 miles. You know, it's just be okay. You know, allow yourself to be out here without judgment and without, I don't know, just without any preconception of you're doing it wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, I am very judgy about myself, so I always thought like, oh, you're doing it wrong, and oh man, you should have gone through the Sierras and risked all that snow so you could hike through all of the fires instead of doing it your way when you got to see everything. But yeah, it was, I think I went into it with this view of baseline. I'm going to see some pretty stuff. I'm going to meet some cool people, and I don't have to just be in a city pretending that I'm okay and dealing with a job and dealing with people and just putting on a face because, you know, when you're going through trauma and grief and everything else, you don't want to bring anyone down. And I don't think our culture really allows for people to just be openly and outwardly going through something. You know, it makes us all uncomfortable because we don't want to think like, oh man, that could be me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the automatic response to, hey, how you doing? Is, yeah, good.
Yeah,
fine.
doing great.
No matter how inaccurate that statement is. I mean, that's the standard response. That's the expected response. 99% of the people that ask you, hey, how you doing? Don't want to hear the truth.
Of course not.
They're just a standard courtesy greeting. So yeah. Good point. Good point.
But yeah, on the PCT, and also like, I know Burning Man has a bunch of problems, but I love it. Mm-hmm. You know, you actually get to be like, I'm not doing okay today. And people are like, okay. You know, they don't have to take on your emotional burden, but they'll be like, all right, I accept that. I'm hearing you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I did a shout out to Glenn Schweitzer and his film Trail Mix at the beginning of the episode, and his documentary is exactly about the healing aspect of the trail. And it wasn't, he didn't realize that's what the documentary was going to be about. It was only after he interviewed so many different people on the trail at so many different points of the trail and learned their stories and learned what they were going through and learned how the trail actually transformed them and sent them to a better place, that it became more apparent to him. So that's a common theme that runs through these long trails, and people figuring themselves out and figuring life out and working on stuff. Another common theme that you mentioned that comes back again and again is the singularity of purpose on the trail. And you put it, it was almost poetic the way you put it, that you get up and your sole purpose is to get to this point, 10 miles, 15 miles, 25 miles down the trail, and set up camp and then do it all over again. And everything else just falls by the wayside. All the complexities of society.
Yeah. And something just that I thought of when you were saying that first point, that, you know, I've started thinking about a lot is that these and this will go into my last point, but these trails have the answers for you, but they aren't, like, trails don't perform miracles. They're just the trail. And so it's really, they have the clues and they have the, they have the clues, they have the answers, but you're the one who has to put them together. And sometimes you're putting them together at the time, and sometimes you're putting them together in retrospect. But, you know, the answers are there. It's just, they might not be the answers that you think you should be getting or you think you should be looking for. So always keep an open mind.
Yeah, I think part of the magic of the trail and the healing part of the trail is that you are in your head for a long time. I mean, there's a lot of interior dialogue and reflection that takes place, and that's where things get sorted. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how anyone else does it. Me being in my head too often is sick of that guy.
Now, hey, I thought it interesting that you brought up a point that you're hard on yourself. You think you're not doing it right, and so I want to hear what a typical day on the trail, on the PCT. Pick a stretch. Pick a day from the middle of the trail. You've already got 1,000 miles under your belt. What's the average day on the PCT look like for Snake Eyes? Take us from waking up in the morning.
Let's say 1,000 miles in, so I'd probably be in. Man, it was so different. So I'll tell you the section that I hiked with my hiking partner, Black Widow. So we would get up. I would be freezing because I totally should have. So like I said at the beginning, get a good puffy. I did not have one. I was freezing every night. I also didn't have a good sleeping bag. Get a good sleeping bag. Invest in those. So I'd wake up freezing. I would take my tent down. My fingers would go numb. They still do. The second it gets a little cold, all of my fingers will go numb automatically. Pack up, make fun of, I'd make fun of, or Black Widow would make fun of me for being so cold in the mornings. I would make fun of her for being the two of us who got hypothermia. And then we would start off. I would try to learn a little bit of German from her as we were walking. She would learn a lot of sarcasm from me. And about, I don't know, for a couple of miles, I'd have headphones in. I'd be listening to a podcast about how the world was going wrong. Just because, I don't know, like a lot of people say that you're just supposed to tune out there. And a lot of people said for me, like, it's probably, why are you making this worse? Just keep it out. But, at that point, and I still think this, we were falling to fascism. I still think there's a chance that we might. So, Jewish people tend to pay attention to that kind of stuff. We have a historical memory. So yeah, I'd walk with that, and then I would see something. I don't know what it would be. That day that I'm thinking of, it was a glacier on Mount Adams that we were passing by. Just this newly cracked glacier that had started to slide down. And, it was smoky at that point, but it was still in those moments. And again, not ascribing this to any one deity, but I would see God. Those little moments, I would be like, I can feel the presence of something much greater than me. And I feel a connection to it. And, just would look at that, not for long enough, because there was never enough time, because we wanted to finish. You spend too much time in any one place on the PCT, you burn your calendar, and then the snows come. And, we'd sit and just bullshit around. We'd either be like, this is the most amazing thing ever, or sometimes we'd be like, man, that thing was so cool, this thing isn't. And eat lunch. We had this woman I met who used to be a Hollywood caterer. She brought a bunch of food all the way back in White River Campground, I think, way back in Southern California. And I was like, her daughter had done the PCT, so she brought this huge meal for us, this chicken, just amazing trail magic. And I was like, hey, I write a blog. Would you want to be on the email list? And she's like, oh, no one's ever asked me that. And so so she gave me her email address and I sent her the blog. And then she wrote me back and was like, hey, where's your next stop? And I told her, and she sent me a care package. And she kept sending me and Black Widow care packages through the entire hike. She sponsored our hike and she made this amazing cracker mix. And so me and Black Widow would be eating that cracker mix for lunch and like making sure the other person didn't have more cracker mix because, you know, we both wanted to not have it at the same time because we didn't want each other to be jealous of it. And we just talk about how lucky we were to be out there, or we'd talk about how our families would never understand why we were out there, or all the people who just were like, why would you, isn't it uncomfortable in the morning? Isn't it bad? And we'd be like, isn't traffic uncomfortable? Like, you do it because it's worth it, you know? And yeah, we just keep walking, see more beautiful stuff, make jokes about how we hadn't seen any bears. And then about 5 miles before the destination, we'd eat dinner. So we didn't have any smells by the campsite. Walk another 5, set up our tents, and just, I'd fill out my journal for that night. I had a folding Bluetooth keyboard. So I just like spend, 5-10 minutes trying to remember every incredible thing I'd seen that day and not because it's too big. And then I would just pass out to a cold, cold sleep that was never fully restful, but it was always worth it.
Well, you know what, Snake Eyes?
What?
Sounds to me like you're doing it right.
Yeah, I know. But man, people who are true to the thru, that's another cult out there that, it's amazing that people went through the Sierras with all that snow, but a lot of people quit because of that. And some people died. And yeah, I remember flip-flopped, stayed some days ahead of fire closures. Like, I think I was one of the last people to see the Jefferson Wilderness when it was still unburnt.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely saw, Cascade Locks before it went up. And so got to the northern terminus and turned around because I hadn't taken care of a DUI from a decade ago, so couldn't get into Canada. And started walking back, and this guy who I had met at Hiker Heaven, which was just like clothes torn, like lost 20 pounds, but he'd done the whole through hike. He made it through the snow, and he finished at the exact same time that I did. And I was just amazed. And, then I felt this guilt because it's like, oh, God damn it. If you just tried harder and gone through Kennedy Meadows and, maybe whatever, that could be you. If you'd hiked 40 miles without stopping for a day through Oregon and not seen your friends, that could have been you. And then I just had this moment where I was yelling at myself alone in the North Cascades going, look, if you goddamn want to hike through the Sierras in the snow, you can go next year. But if you don't want to do that, then shut the fuck up and just enjoy this. Because it's like you drive yourself nuts sometimes thinking about how you should do stuff. And it really takes you away from how amazing it is that you're even there.
Absolutely. Absolutely correct.
Yeah.
So Snake Eyes, you know where we are?
I'm in Tacoma. You look from your video like you're in the Sierras.
We are at that time of the segment where I ask you for your pro tip insight of the week. Okay.
Also, since I've been wondering, is that Whitney behind you, or is that Guitar Lake?
No, it's actually Evolution Lake, and on the right side, that is Mount Mendel and Mount Darwin. Yeah.
Man, yeah, Evolution Lake. That was after Muir Pass. That's the one I was fucking weeping at. Because, like, just this sunset, man.
Yes.
It was something else.
Yep.
All right, so advice time.
Advice time.
All right. So my pro tip, which is something I learned from the Shikoku Pilgrimage and has served me well for everything else I've ever done in my life, is don't define the journey while you're still on it. Because if you, like I was saying before, if you decide that your journey should be one thing, you will spend your entire time looking for the answers that make it that one thing, instead of spending your time being on the journey and taking it all in. And yeah, also, if you're not getting what you think you want out of the journey, then you will start that poison thought of what else could I be doing? And I saw a lot of people getting off trail because they were just like, well, this isn't fun. What am I, why am I here? It's like, you're here to do it. You're here to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. This is the magic.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, sometimes it's not great. In fact, Southern Oregon was a fucking nightmare. Those mosquitoes were no joke.
Sometimes you just have to embrace the suck.
Yep. Embrace the suck. And also, the suck is, not just part of it, but maybe the suck's the whole point. You'll find out later.
Yes. Hours of torture for moments of brilliance.
Mm-hmm.
Very good. Well
Sounds
said.
like writing.
Yes. So there you have it. That's it. Season 2, episode 17 is in the books. I hope our listeners enjoyed our time with Snake Eyes. I want to thank him for joining us this week. How can our listeners keep up with you on social media, and where can they find updates on your latest adventures, Snake Eyes?
You can find everything on my Instagram. That's the only social I have left. It is Barach Outdoors, B as in boy, ARACH, Outdoors. And if you want to find out more about what happened in Japan, Fighting Monks and Burning Mountains, Misadventures on a Buddhist Pilgrimage on Amazon.
Very good. Remember to check out the pod on social media as well. We are on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter. And if you have comments or clips you want to share, you can send it to me at johnfreakinmuir@gmail.com. Paul, I'm also looking to you to give our listeners your recommendation for a book, a movie, a documentary, a website, or a YouTube channel that will keep them connected to outdoor adventures. And we are just taking it as a given that their first book they should look at is your book. So what else do you have for us?
Man, I just finished, when I went to raft the Grand Canyon, I read The Emerald Mile, and that book is amazing. It's about three people, three river guides who take advantage of this weather event that almost destroys the dams that lead down to the Grand Canyon. They have to open the dams, and the water levels rise to levels that they haven't been in, I think, 100 years. So it's just shooting in this wooden boat down through the canyon. You learn all about the geology of the canyon. You learn about the history of the dams. You learn about what was lost damming the canyons. And it's just an incredible adventure book. Movie-wise, and no one has seen it, Meru, Meru.
Yes.
Is an incredible documentary about Conrad Anker, Jimmy Chin, and Rezu Öztürk.
Yes.
Climbing the shark fin of Meru route, which had never been done before. It's twists and turns. People almost die. It's crazy. And when they succeed, your heart leaps with them.
2 excellent recommendations. Thank you. And before we wrap things up, I'm starting a new segment, new this very episode, called What Have I Not Asked You That You're Dying to Tell Me About?
Oh, snap. See, this is the problem. This is why people got to ask questions. Let's see. You didn't ask me about the Colorado Trail. And all I'll say about the Colorado Trail is that it is also very worth a hike. It is I think the East Collegiate, whichever one is harder, it's worth it, but it is rough. So be prepared for that. But the colors of those mountains is something you won't believe. It truly just makes you realize how little time you've been around.
Nice. Nice. So that is a wrap from the John Freaking Muir studio. Snake Eyes, I want to congratulate you on your marriage and your happiness. Do you have any shout outs to friends and family?
Shout out to my friend Nick Busey in Denver. You'll get to those mountains again, man, and I'll meet you there.
All right. Very good. Thank you for tuning in. Always remember, the trail is the trail. It doesn't care if you want to go downhill. It doesn't care if it's almost dark and you're looking for a campsite. It doesn't even care if there's a monk waiting for you at the top of the mountain to take you down with a karate kick. The trail is the trail. Embrace the suck.